Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Falkenberg. I'm CEO of a company called CLEVVA. As a company, we build, deploy, and manage virtual agents for typically large banks, insurers, telcos, as well as utility companies. And what I'm hoping to do in the next 30 minutes with you is to offer you some insights into the virtual agents that we work with and the type of work they perform. I'd also hope to offer you some insights into what these new Gen 3 virtual agents are doing and why they are so different to chatbots. I'd like to offer you examples of virtual agents working within a banking context. And then also give you a chance to win a virtual agent prototype. If you we'll be sharing with you a link, and you'll just look for that in the chat, and just click on that, and if you enter your details, you stand the chance of getting a virtual agent prototype built for your company to show you how it would work in your world. But let's start then with first this concept of virtual agents, and really what we have been trying to get right with this construct of a virtual agent is to focus more on the conversational layer, the logic that sits in the front office of a customer engagement. It's the work that human agents do when they have conversations with customers, be they sales related or service related. And it's where customers are really asking for typically advice in terms of product and sales advice, resolving service queries or issues or complaints, or where there is some form of debt collection that is taking place, and there's a collection engagement that's happening. And really what we've been trying to see is how can we automate a lot of these engagements so that customers can get advice in terms of sales, they can get their queries, issues, and complaints handled, as well as any debt collection resolved without having to necessarily speak to a human agent. And the first generation or attempt was really where chatbots started. Is we got so excited about the conversational capabilities of chatbots and the ability to do natural language understanding. But essentially what we forgot was that they also needed a brain. They needed a powerful brain to handle these type of multi-dimensional rule-based conversations. And so most chatbots have really been quite frustrating for customers. They are fairly simplistic digital assistants. And their answers are normally limited to what's available in the knowledge bases. So if I ask, what loans do you offer to your bank, you may well have information around the various loan products, and that chatbot could offer that through links or actually giving it direct information. Or does a product called FlexiSave Plus cover dental work claims? If that information exists, the chatbot can offer it. So it's really a question and answer machine, but that's about it. And most roads still lead to an agent as soon as you ask anything else. So what we then started to look at is customers, when they come for help, they are not just asking for information, they want stuff done for them. And so we started to see generation 2 virtual agents come into the market, where it was a lot more around actioning. These transactional bots did they could action a request, but that request needed to be very explicit. It needed to be something that a bot could then go and automate. So pay Mike Jones $100 from my Transact account. If Mike Jones is a beneficiary, there's $100 Transact account that can potentially be processed. Or add an Apple iPhone 11 to my insurance cover. If there may be a little bit more that's needed to be known, a few questions could be asked, but that request could typically be processed. What we, however, found was that neither the Gen 1 nor Gen 2 virtual agents could handle the sort of high context, the context-rich rule-bound sales and service engagements that most customers were essentially wanting to have when they were calling a contact center. So, for example, if I need money for a renovation and international travel, what's the right loan solution? Well, there may be a lot more information and an analysis that needs to be done before I can shape that solution. It's not a simple answer. It always depends. Or why has my payment not gone through? Well, there may be some information that we could pull from the operational systems, but we may need to ask a bit more about your situation, the context, before we can answer that type of a question. And as soon as it depends, the context matters, but you're in a rule-based environment or regulated environment, those virtual agent Gen 1 and Gen 2 failed, and essentially we needed to hand off to a live agent. So when you look at the ratio of queries coming into banks, not that many are being resolved using the Gen 1 or Gen 2. Most are still flooding the contact centers. Excitingly, though, we are starting to see the emergence of Gen 3 virtual agents, and these are far more capable of being able to handle the complexity of banking, sales, and service queries and conversations without having to bring humans in the loop. They not only can work across channels. So for example, you can have a single virtual agent that can work with your customers via your chat channels like WhatsApp, your website, your app, as well as email. But also, if anything is not able to be resolved, or a virtual agent can only take it so far and needs to hand off to a human agent, they can do that seamlessly with a full record so that the human agent can take over. And what you'll notice is the virtual agents can also feed operational systems directly, so that most of the queries can be resolved first touch without having to put or bring humans in the loop. They also are getting very good at three particular roles within the CX space. The first is as an inbound agent, the second is as an outbound agent, and the third is a support agent. And you can have a single virtual agent that can perform these three roles across different channels. So an inbound agent is really where you are getting inbound, typically via the web or via the app, where there are queries or issues or complaints that a customer is coming in with. And why it's so important that you have an expert to handle that and not an assistant is because most times that query first needs to be clarified. To understand the full details around what is the ask. And then once the ask is understood, to then do a full analysis of the problem statement or the problem domain. This could be really understanding what is the situation that the customer's in, what are all the factors that in terms of the needs, what are all the issues and the root causes of the problems. So that once the full details are understood, the virtual agent can then identify correct solutions, cross-sell, upsell, etc., and then ensure the processing. So inbound is particularly difficult because the ask may not be clear, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of that clarification and analysis before resolution happens. Outbound is different. Outbound, there is often a prediction of some form of need or problem. And what happens is that typically human agents are going to call, for example, if there's a view that this particular customer would be a high potential for a loan product or a funeral cover. And they can make the call to first do qualification, understand or validate needs, maybe make a targeted offer. And what we can now do with virtual agents is the customer can have a link sent to them. And as they click that link, the virtual agent knows them, knows their context, and can have that same engagement and actually validate needs, make offers, close that off, or do targeted debt collection as well. So there's quite an exciting area with virtual agents in outbound. And the third area is in support, where often within, for example, a website or within an online form, customers are getting stuck with decisions. So you might have a drop down with a couple of options and the customers don't know which options. And the answer depends on what they've answered before. It may also depend on other information that the customer needs to give. And what we can now do is embed virtual agents into those friction points, so that as a customer is needing help, they're not contacting the contact center. A virtual agent can pop up in context, know what the answers were historically, know what questions to ask, be able to identify the right solution and hand back to that website or form, and the customer doesn't then have to get blocked. They can continue through. So there's quite a lot of exciting work happening with in-context support with support agents. So to wrap up, these virtual agents need to have quite a lot of capability that typically the chatbots don't have. They need to be able to have hyper-personalized yet structured and rule-bound conversations. So in banks, if you look at your sales and your support and servicing conversations, those architectures are structured. Rules determine it. The challenge is to hyper-personalize them within the context. And so these virtual agents in Gen 3 are specialists in that. They're also exceptionally good at the ability to classify a customer's real intent before starting and jumping into conversations or scrolling down some decision tree architecture. They don't operate with those limitations. They can handle upfront clarification and then move on. They're also very good at the analysis, both of situations, of needs, as well as root cause analysis. They are very good at being able to ask the right questions in the right order at the right time. So they can handle process compliance, but in the multidimensionality of context. And that's really what experts are excellent at, is knowing what questions to ask at the right points to unlock the right conversations. They can handle in-context decision support. So as I was mentioning, they can pop up, they can leverage what's known data, they can know what outstanding questions to offer, and they can give relevant advice. They also are able to perform the last mile. So they can make sure that the right data is handed off to the right system for processing, either using RPA or directly through APIs, so that at no point are you having a block in the engagement journey. You can do straight through processing with these virtual agents. They're also very good at process and regulatory compliance. They're not black boxes. You can absolutely get granularity in terms of every engagement, every rule that was applied, and absolute assurance that you have a virtual agent that is going to follow your formulas and not go rogue on you with random machine learning. They're also very good at learning. So they need to, first of all, follow the rules in context, but we need to be able to understand every conversation and understand what are working, what questions at what points are working better, so that logic can be optimized constantly and you're getting an improved virtual agent rather than a static one. But talking to change, they also need to be able to handle constant rule changes and data changes and not have the limitations of knowledge bases and decision trees that hold them, but that they are dynamic. And then finally, that they can also work well with different CX platforms and that they can fit in very quickly within the existing assisted channels and take over the unassisted digital channels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to showcase 3 examples of how these Gen 3 virtual agents are operating. The first one is an illustration of an outbound lead qualification where a prediction is made, a WhatsApp link is sent, and how that can transpire. I'm then going to showcase an example of if you came into a bank and you wanted to have a loan query, but you needed some advice around which loans. And just to illustrate the kind of complexity that these virtual agents can cope with. And then finally, an illustration of an email where I maybe as a customer email in to say I'm querying a payment, and I can then get back a link that then opens up a virtual agent that resolves it without me having to actually go through to the actual contact center. And in that example, we're going to show you one that is in a logged in state, but initially one that isn't, so that you can see how the virtual agent can adapt to known data or non-known data. So the first one is the lead qualification illustration.
Meet Sam. Sam recently bought an engagement ring from a jewelry store. An AI algorithm within the credit card division of his bank flagged this transaction as a loan sale opportunity. A text message is automatically sent to Sam's mobile number asking if he'd be interested in a loan. Sam clicks on the link in the message and gets connected to Riley. Riley is a digital service expert built and managed by the customer service team of his bank. Before a sales consultant makes the call, Riley first validates the opportunity. Riley begins by walking Sam through a detailed needs analysis. Riley shapes each engagement dynamically based on the customer's profile and their specific answers. This ensures that every conversation stays hyper-personalized. Riley also confirms if Sam has any related needs that could be met. To help Sam make key decisions, Riley also provides context-relevant information. This helps convince Sam that he is ready to apply for a loan. All that is left to do is to complete the application. The bank has found that having a sales consultant handle this part of the process increases the likelihood of success by up to 25%. Riley quickly passes across all information that has been collected to Alex, the next available agent. As the dialer makes the call to Sam, Alex reads through the detailed report provided by Riley. Once Sam answers, Alex confirms his needs and begins the application process at once. In no time, Sam has his loan approved and is delighted with the outcome. Alex can move on to the next sales call quickly, another call that will have the same positive result thanks to Riley's prior groundwork. Why not get a digital expert to reduce your cost of sale?
So what you would have noticed there, and it's what we're seeing a lot, is the ability to either just do on a prediction, outbound and do some qualification, or if we can do this, the entire offer and actually close it without having to hand off to an agent, we can also do that. But sometimes it is actually very effective to do the upfront validation and then get a human agent to have that warm closing conversation. So the combination can be very powerful. It depends on the use case. In this next use case that I'm going to cover is a customer that comes in onto, for example, a website again, and is looking for a loan query and isn't going to just be given links to documents, but actually will have an expert that can in fact guide them through their decisioning and handle quite a complex engagement.
In this demonstration, I'd like to show you how the CLEVVA Digital Expert can be deployed onto a bank's website using the out-of-the-box web interface. This interface is easily deployed as a single line of code by adding a script to the website. The Digital Expert works on any device. It could be a mobile, could be a laptop or desktop, and will respond to the size of the screen. In this example, the customer might be looking for a loan. So in this case, they can ask a question, and the Digital Expert allows them to type it in a free, natural way. So they could type in, "I need a loan," and they could click next. So one of the advantages of the interface is it's really, it's maximizing the richness of HTML5 and allows you to fit a lot into the space. Now the Digital Expert will send that utterance to the natural language understanding component of choice. We have connectors with Microsoft Lewis, and in this case, it's come back and it understands that they're looking for a loan, and it's trying to understand now and to clarify how it can help. Do they want to do a loan application now, or do they want to explore loan options? In this case, this customer has a couple of needs. They need money. They're not quite sure which loan would be appropriate to them. So the Digital Expert presents a number of options, and in this case, they need help deciding. And the user can then be asked a number of questions by the Digital Expert, just like a banking expert or the best banking consultants would handle this conversation. In this example, we're showing a needs analysis that's based on the life stage of the customer. So in this case, they may be at the stage of improving, stabilizing their family and their lifestyle. And this infers a whole lot of needs to make the conversation relevant to that particular customer and to hyper-personalize it. It can also gamify and present some interesting stats to keep it engaging. For example, that they form part of 8% of the population in that life stage, and can also present dynamic links to join the community on a social platform if they want to connect with people in the same life stage as them, as an example. The needs that are inferred that may be relevant to this particular customer are presented. And in this case, they may be looking to improve their home. They might be wanting to do some extensions, and also they'll be thinking of planning a family holiday. So they can select one or many needs and they can click next, and the Digital Expert can start to shape the conversation accordingly. In this case, it wants to go in and understand a little bit more about their home improvements. What are they looking to do? So are they looking to do repairs, extensions, remodeling? In this case, they're looking to do extensions, and they will click next. So the conversation then starts to shape around the inputs. In this case, the Digital Expert can then show relevant links to building material suppliers that they can get great discounts on, given that they are looking to do some extensions. We can then continue the conversation, and What we're also able to do is if I also wanted to furnish the home, I could go back a couple of steps and then I could select refurnishing as well. So this feature allows you to go back in history, change the conversation, and then it'll move it forward with that selection in mind. So it really is dynamic in terms of moving back and forth, unlike other chatbots, which make it very difficult. You need to start the conversation again. Now you can see that instead of going to the next screen, it's opening up some more information about furniture and discounts that they can get with some of their partners. So that is dynamically added as part of the conversation based on the selections. If we continue, then it goes back to understanding a bit more about the holiday plans, so we can see what sort type of solution they need. In this case, want to know what the destination is, and we can infer a whole lot of things from that. The timeline, that also helps with the solution. Do they need flights, accommodation, or car hire? Let's say they're going to stay with family and they just need flights. They don't need a car and they don't need accommodation. Now, the digital expert can work with other systems, can also then go and get recommendations around cross-selling, upselling products based on the selection. For example, conversation about Forex or visas and travel advisory services that the banks offer, and also travel insurance that they can explore with links to the relevant web pages. The customer can then continue and also be given a number of links to, for example, benefits on flights with partner companies. The digital expert could then also recommend a number of solutions. So for example, they may want to use their home loan, they may want to finance the holiday and the renovations through their home loan. So that's an option. Or for example, the credit card, and then again, also looking at other cross-selling, upselling around Forex solutions. If we go...
I'm going to stop it there. I think what I just want to highlight is that everything you're seeing there is very rule-based, hyper-personalized, and completely dynamic. So it all depends on the multiple variables. And our history was trying to either decision tree some of that and guide some of that logic using knowledge bases, etc. But we could never get that kind of dynamic conversational architecture that is structured, but hyper-personalizing and totally rule-based. And now we can. What you're seeing in terms of the front end and the look and feel, you can totally adjust. And you might also have noticed we're moving away from just pure natural language, free text and unstructured conversations to far more structured. And that is because within the banking context, we actually, once we understand the customer's intent, it actually becomes a structured conversation. It's just how do you make that the most optimal targeted conversation that gets the outcome for the customer in context. And I think that's where the Gen 3 virtual agents are shifting, is they're not just the typical chatbot unstructured. They are actually becoming very hyper personalized, but driving structured conversations that get meaningful outcomes. The next one I want to, and the final one I want to just give you a sight of is an email. And imagine now sending email, a request, having that email automatically understood, and you get an email back that then allows you to engage with a virtual agent that resolves your query. And it may be complex, and it may require actually hooking into third-party systems to get that done. Imagine doing that entirely without having to speak to an individual. Here's an example of how it can work.
In this example, I'm going to demonstrate how a customer can engage with a digital expert via email. So in this example, the customer has a payment query. They made a payment to somebody overseas, and that person has not received the money. So they've sent an email, and the bank has sent back a standard response and included a link for the customer to click on to engage with the digital expert. So the customer will click the link, and it will open up the digital expert responsive web interface. This can be opened up on any device that will respond to whatever size it needs to be. They will then ask the digital expert a question. For example, I have a payment query, I have a payment issue, and they can ask that in any way they like, and the digital expert should be able to understand it using the natural language understanding integration with Microsoft Lewis. And the digital expert will then start to ask clarifying questions. Now that it understands it's a payment issue, they need to know, was it into their bank account or out of the bank account? It needs to ask this because they weren't clear in what they had said in the initial question. They also need to confirm how was the payment done. In this case, it was an EFT. And the digital expert now has a good sense of what type of payment it was and has the option to either do an authenticated or non-authenticated process in terms of resolving this issue. I'm going to show you an example of not being authenticated. This is just ultimately going to ask questions and then determine what the outcome should be based on the business rules. So for example, where it was sent to is important, so the country, the rules that govern that. And if we look at the time, so there's obviously business rules around the payment and how long it should take to clear. So the customer can just plug those in, and the digital expert could then ask a few more questions. For example, if they use the standard option, it would then apply that rule and then be able to give an outcome based on those three inputs. So for example, they would need to wait another day because it does take 3 days to clear to Australia. They could then be given a reference number if they did need to follow up on it. And they are then also able to ask another query or get help with something else. So
I'm going to stop it there. It does go on to show that if we did know and you were authenticated, it would pull all your records, actually know which account from where. You wouldn't have to indicate that. The virtual agent would have a lot more context and would able to resolve a lot more for you. So we're doing quite a lot of that type of fully integrated query resolution because it gives us such a rich amount of data. The customer doesn't then need to tell you a whole lot of information. We know it already, and we can actually then trigger the resolution without them having to spend much time engaging with us. So to wrap, really what we are starting to see with these virtual agents is that the timelines are also shortening. It's taking typically about 4 weeks to get proof of concepts up and running, and these are where they actually are showcasing full end user stories within their environment in the channel of choice. Within about 3 months thereafter, the first proof of value can start kicking in, where the virtual agents within the channel in a production environment can start actually doing either outbound work, inbound work in a targeted area. And then during year one, you typically are expanding the number of queries, the roles, as well as the channels, and really getting significant demonstration of value within by year one. And thereafter, it's just expansion. So what we really are excited to see is the movements in terms of speed, but also that the value is very clear. It's not just a lot of chatbot that all ends up with agent. It's actually full end-to-end query resolution that can be tracked. If you would be interested in seeing how one of these virtual agents actually works in your world and your bank with your content, what I ask is for you to click on the link that was provided in the chat. We will be selecting a random number, and that person will win a prototype for free, and we'll be getting back to you within the week. So I really do ask, if that is something that you'd like to see in your world without having to pay a cent, why don't you enter the competition and see if you can win that. We would love to be able to showcase that for you. If you don't win, you can certainly also engage with us in a free discovery session that can look at light prototyping for you as well and get a sense of how these virtual agents are working. But I hope that has been helpful in giving you a better sense of how virtual agents have totally moved from the simple chatbot worlds to now becoming very capable of handling high context rules, compliance environments, and significantly reducing the types of call volumes that are coming into the assisted channels. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks so much.